Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, family. Welcome to the Mental House. I'm your host, Khadijah. Um, I want to share something with you, family. Um, and this is very important, and it's something that Charles Austin Beard wrote in 1898. Okay, so it was like maybe about 20 something years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. There is but one way to know the truth, and that is not a golden one. It is fraught with toil and sacrifice and perhaps ridicule. The seeker of the truth must be fearless. He must not be afraid to enter the innermost holies of holies and to tear down the veils of superstition that hang about any human and so-called divine institution. It is the truth that makes men free, and only the truth. If the truth tears down every church and every government under the sun, then let truth be known. And this truth only will be known when men stop to swallow the capsules of ancient doctrines and divinities and politics, and when men begin to seek the truth in the records of history, politics, religion, and science. Truth is not easy. It's not a hard pill to swallow. When we talk about, no contact, well, it's kind of difficult to do when you're living in a society where the control group has taken over everything. They've stolen all your wealth. Um, they've actually put you pretty much in a situation, in a condition that you're in, and then they have the flying monkeys agree that you're the problem. You have been socially engineered to hate yourself. You have been given propaganda. You've been mistreated. You've been given an image of Jesus that is white. You have been subjugated to every vile, inhumane treatment possible. You have had your men folks split up the middle with a horse running in one direction and the other horse running in the other direction. You've had women strung up and babies cut out of their stomachs, pulled out of the womb and bashed their heads on the concrete. And you want to know how much trauma we can take? Like I told you, the DNA, the trauma of our DNA is already heavy enough. And I know that you race baiters are out there waiting for black people to snap. But when we snap, we're going to snap in a way that y'all not going to be, it's not going to be, when we really snap, it's not going to be in the usual way that you expect, like what you can prepare for, like, burning down the cities and doing all that. Because when it's spontaneous, guess what? We're all going to go. We're all going to go. Either we are going to learn to live together and respect each other and then play no contact. As far as we're concerned, we don't really need to be around you guys too much because we already know that you're pathologically, psychologically damaged. The founders of this country think this is their country when they stole it from somebody else. So you already know that you're dealing with a mindset that is so damn crazy that you cannot reason with a beast like this. You can't reason with a beast. So the only thing you as a person of color can do is not make excuses. And when you see the black people who have been damaged so much by white supremacy that they make excuses for their oppressor, then you consider that person the same as your oppressor. You deal with him accordingly. You have no trust in this individual because all through time there have been Sambos, there have been people that have stepped in the way of our own freedom. My favorite t-shirt, and I don't have it, is Harriet Tubman said, "I freed hundreds of slaves." Hundreds! I could have freed thousands more. if I could have just convinced them that they were slaves. Now, what kind of we're talking about over 100 years ago. Listen to this. I freed hundreds of slaves. Could have freed thousands more if only I could have convinced them that they were slaves. Now, they outside in the fields working from sun up to sundown. They're being beat. They're being raped. The men and the women and the children by these psychopathic, deranged European devils. And she actually had to convince some of them that they had to go. In fact, the ones that Harriet took by force, she had to put a gun up to their head because she knew that those Sambos would go back and tell the master exactly where she went. So as Africans, we not only have to worry about the police and the constructs that they put on us, we have to worry about our own people who are mentally ill, who have been trained by the beast, and they are actually the beast in blackface. There are people who are lining their pockets for their own best interest, and they will sell you up the river. People like Al Sharpton and all those kind of guys that race bait the people and who, basically are informants. Jesse Jackson. I mean, we are catching hell from every spectrum of the diaspora. But when we wake up, the sleeping giant is woke. And I don't think y'all really, really, really want to lose the country. Do we? Because if you think for 1 minute you can just exterminate all of us, you're crazy. This whole country will go down. We built it. And you might think that we're going to keep killing one another. But eventually that wrath, because nobody, this is a law of nature is to fight back. Self-preservation is the first law of nature, they say. So if you expect people to be comfortable and actually get comfortable with this killing like you did before, then y'all better get comfortable with it. But you know that the great blood shedder can shed blood too, and his blood can flow. So this is what we're trying to, I guess, guard against. But it is what it is. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, que sera. I'm not trying to be funny, but it is what it is. I mean, straight up, it is what it is. And I want to share this one more thing with y'all before I go. And this is not funny, and I want to leave this on the heart of most of us, because a lot of us are illusioned because we've been comfortable living with the beast, and we're much more comfortable than our ancestors and maybe even our relatives of 40 50 years ago. We're much more comfortable because we got iPhones and iPads and we got good jobs, and some of us have gotten good dollars, and so we thought that we were really part of the American dream. But what you need to understand is white people's madness is really the madness of their survival. I don't know if I could blame them. I mean, I definitely blame the bull crap, and this is why karma's going to come back to bite them. But I understand why they like cat scratching, because guess what? Their numbers are down. Our numbers are up. They see how they stack up to the rest of the world, and they know that they're recessive, and they know that we're dominant. So what their numbers are dwindling, and if it's for genetic survival, everybody wants to survive. Even us, we should want to survive, and hopefully, at that paradigm that we know. That should be the paradigm that we all know that we want to at least live. But I guess if you really want to control somebody, you can't take the fact that my numbers are smaller, and they're going to be smaller because I'm not an indigenous person from anywhere. Everywhere I've gone, I've raped and robbed and pillaged. So that's why my numbers are small. That's why I'm recessive. I can't. And once white people get over their arrogance, maybe they can live in peace and harmony. But and they can't do it because they weren't produced for that reason. That's a whole nother story. I won't go there. Just check this out real quickly. Between 1824 and 1943, there were over 300 events classified as race riots, which entire white communities turned on, murdered, maimed black Americans, and destroyed black communities entirely. There were 20 such events in major cities and hundreds of other in smaller towns across the U.S. during the summer of 1919 alone. This period has been tagged by historians as the Red Summer of 1919 because the events all happened between May and October of that year, and the blood of their black victims literally painted the streets red in America. That year, tens of hundreds of black Americans were killed, wounded, or maimed for economic, social, and political and other reasons, both real and imaginary. They even killed blacks for recreation activities in rural areas, activities called boot burning, the burning of a black man at a stake or a bonfire, or a picnic, a slang term for pick a nigga for lynching, became common weekly events to kill the monotony of rural life. It was not uncommon for whites to eat, drink, play, and dance as they created a murderous and festive atmosphere, while their victims suffered from multiple tortures. White men, women, and children all participated in what was described by Ida B. Wells Barnett as an orgy. Just a fucking orgy of murder and mayhem. It was even considered patriotic to participate in such lynchings. Remember that. But you want somebody to bow down for that that flag. Remember this. It was even considered patriotic to participate in lynchings. Many white war veterans wore their military uniforms as they marched and waved flags, while some poor black person was being tortured. Politicians of the day were elected purely on anti-Negro platforms across America, and white supremacy ran unchecked throughout every American institution. Many times whites massacred blacks based on the perceived notions that led to mass outrage. For example, in Helena and Phillips County, Arkansas, in 1919, they viewed black union meetings as organized uprising and suspected the Negroes were planning to kill whites in mass, when in fact black farmers and farm workers had held a meeting after forming a union, began to demand their fair accounting from the white landowners or the sharecroppers in their accounts. What they feared most was these blacks were armed and refused to disarm because of their treatment of blacks in the East St. Louis in East St. Louis of 1917. That's why I told you about all these gun buyback programs. I'm not for them at all. The first thing you want to do is disarm a people when you want to kill them. Do not turn in your arms. If you got a gun, keep it. Don't turn it in. That gun buyback shit is crazy. Do not. Then you're going to be sitting there like a sitting duck. After savagery and butchery displayed by whites in the East St. Louis on July 2nd, 1917, against thousands of armed men and women and children, blacks across the country refused to disarm themselves on the assumption that whites would murder them anyway, and any confrontation was potentially dangerous. However, the blacks were almost always outnumbered and had insufficient ammunition to reign victorious. They were inspired by a poem called If We Must Die, and that's the one I gave you yesterday, by Claude McKay, which reasoned that it was better to die fighting than to die like rats. in a barrel. Now, these white farmers had been cheating them for years by cooking the books on the black sharecroppers. Y'all know how all that stuff went. So at the end of the year, if the hard worker, the sharecropper got nothing or ended up in debt to the white man. If the sharecropper disputed the accounting, he was usually removed from the property or threatened into just going away mad, but broke. Few whites grew paranoid and feeling depraved because they feared that the great financial loss due to cheap labor. When the help of local white citizens and others in the neighboring counties, they were armed to the teeth as they hunted blacks like animals throughout the woods and killed 25 to 50 blacks early in the manhunt and some 200 over a couple of days. It was said to resemble a sportsman shooting rabbits in the open field. They burned entire black neighborhoods and farms, wounded many, and caused black citizens surrounding counties to flee for their lives, leaving only with the clothes on their backs. Young, old, man, woman. If you were black, you were a target. Today, descendants of black survivors and victims in Helena and Phillips County are now planning to seek reparations for their ordeal. During these riots, it did not matter what your social status was. If you had black skin, you had two choices. You were either dead or moving during the Red Summer of 1919. A common characteristic in every case was the black man was alone when it came to protecting or defending himself and his community. Many had assumed then, as we do now, that our government is supposed to protect us from invaders from within our borders and from foreign nations. Boy, are you dead wrong. After studying the race riots for 9 years, I have determined, based on my findings, that black Americans must protect and defend themselves from invaders within the United States. This assumption is based on these findings. Number one, no government military branches were there to protect us. When I say us, I mean people of blacks. The National Guardsmen would join the rioters and shoot blacks too. Reports show that others just looked the other way because they hated niggers too. Or they come on the scene just in time to put out the fires, mostly in white sections of town or white-owned rental properties in the black neighborhood. The local police joined or aided with the white rioters. Police burned out women and children and took target practice for sport and wager. They threw blacks, as they killed blacks and threw them into every variable flame that they could if they attempted to escape. They disarmed blacks and stood back to let white rioters do what they wanted without fear or justice of the law. There were news reports that police in East St. Louis distributed guns to whites and told them to go for it. The American Legion, the National Guard, and the KKK were always unified against blacks. Mobs made up from white military veterans and fraternal organizations offered their services in burning homes, tracking down and killing blacks. They often led in mobs and initiated and riddling of many of their black victims. ROTC cadets even assisted in the hunting, dragging, and the burning and killing and maiming during the post-war times and received merits, community awards for their beastly behavior. You know what? I just want to give y'all a synopsis of what we involved with. This stuff has never changed. And the added advantage of having the cell phones has afforded us the opportunity to see it even more. That's all. It's to turn up, and we have to realize that. In all cases, not one white person was ever convicted of murdering a black person, regardless of how horrible their crimes. In some cases, the KKK had nothing to do with this attitude. Hate and white supremacy is burned in the fabric of white American society. Blacks had no value and no soul. Blacks had no rights. Blacks weren't people. To whites, all blacks were niggers, subhuman brutes, and criminals. Blacks were dehumanized to the degree that white and the best white Christian would commit any heinous act against us without guilt and without impunity. It's hard to kill one human being, but easy to kill 1,000 of evil niggers. Alright, and this was taken from actually a publication of mine, ours. This is with the Black Holocaust Society. And we have a book that's called A Black Holocaust in America. And it's important that you understand that nothing kills like depraved white men. No other man and no other beast. Alright, talk to you next time, family. See you next time in the Mental House. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe.